Good evening, race fans. We welcome you here to the Charlotte Roval as it plays host to the 31st race of the season for the FTF Grand National Series presented by Barr Visuals. Playoff race number 3 and the first of 2 road course stops here during the playoffs. Seth Cole alongside of Scott Rankin as tonight we prepare for the Apex Action Racing Photography 200K. And Scott, here tonight, I mean, it's not really a road course, it's not really a speedway, it's a little mixture of both. Very interesting racetrack to have here during the playoffs, but certainly a bit of a curveball for these drivers here today as well, because the Charlotte Roval brings a lot of different aspects of racing into one event.
Yeah, and it's, to be perfectly honest with you, Seth, this is one of the most difficult tracks to set up and overtake in terms of road courses and actually get it done. There's really only 2-3 opportunities. It relies quite heavily on mistakes from drivers. I mean, we all know that it's going to be about looking after the tires, looking after things, setting yourself up, giving yourself as much opportunity as you possibly can to bring yourself to the fore. So, look, it's going to be a long haul, and these drivers are going to have to look after themselves as much as they look after the cars.
Going to be a total of 17 corners that these drivers will have to traverse, including 2 chicanes. One you see right here where the cars are currently parked and gridded up. This is the front straightaway chicane, turns 15 to 17, and then also on the back straightaway, turns 11 and 12. These are going to be 2 very crucial portions of the racetrack during the course of tonight's festivities. There you see 19 cars taking time, 32 drivers scheduled to take the green flag. Jonathan Oates on the pole position. Now, Jonathan Oates, of course, the regular season champion. He's currently leading the playoff points as well, but Scott, the first 2 races of the season, we saw Brian Mercurio pick up the victory at Las Vegas. Last week at Talladega, it was Lane Tidwell winning a thriller. Those 2 drivers are not battling for the championship. And so as of right now, there's no driver that is locked in to the championship picture when we get to the season finale at Atlanta. Right now, the only 2 drivers that currently sit in playoff positions are the aforementioned Oates and Matthew Zwack, the top 2 in the point standings. Here tonight, guys that are in the playoffs that are road course aces, this has got to be one of the places they're looking at to lock themselves into the championship picture for sure.
And I mean, you know, it's going to be a difficult opportunity, a difficult prospect for these guys here tonight as well. It's not easy, this circuit, and have a look at the course setup time. This is a fixed time. I don't believe that time will actually pass whatsoever. So the conditions as they stand right now will remain consistent right throughout the night. A little bit dark, a little bit dimly lit. Those lights, they don't reach the infield section of the track. That's a critical factor as well. You're looking for braking markers, you're looking for things, you're not quite able to see things. And the fact that that light's changing throughout the lap as well, that is going to be key.
Visibility going to be a bit of an issue for these guys here tonight for sure. What about with the nighttime conditions? Does that add a little bit of extra grip to these guys in the corners? I was noticing in practice, also observed a couple of these guys in qualifying, especially through a couple sections of the course, the exit off of turn 6 and also coming off of the final chicane onto the front straightaway, still seeing the back end step out and the rear tires not take quite as much as they would like. Does the nighttime condition, the cooler track conditions, give them a little bit more stability than it would if we were in the daytime?
Massively. It's very good. So, look, I mean, you know, end of the day, is it easy to have cooler tires on and let them warm up and get to that overheat point? Yes, it will. It will keep those lap times a little bit quicker in the shorter versions of this race. I think the other main benefit is that it's going to be so much easier for multiple drivers to keep their cars under control, and it's a high intensity circuit because there's so few breaths around the lap. It's not that easy to mentally keep yourself together and look after yourself. It's such an intense load cycle around here, and they'll skip this last chicane to go green here too.
They'll knock down those blue cones as they use the speedway section for the green flag. We're underway here at the Charlotte Roval. 55 laps await us to find out who's going to be waving the checkered flag here tonight, and double wide formation going into turn 1. Nothing crazy, at least early on the first couple of corners up towards the front.
Yeah, but still getting through here too wide in these cars is a very difficult ask. And I'm seeing somebody down the field's already got damage on the nose of their car, damage to the rear end of the 42 car as well. So there's cars already that have made contact, and there's cars in the fence! That's a huge one.
Up and over. Is that Gary Waterworth? No, that's Spencer Ray in the 4, who is up on his roof, comes down to rest on, well, theoretically just one wheel, as the left front wheel up there on the Armco barrier. The other car you see facing the wrong direction, I believe that is the 035 of Brett Pancari. Big airborne wreck there in the center of turns 4 and 5. Brings us under a full course yellow.
Yeah, they've opted to throw a full course yellow, and the reason that they've done that is because where the cars were parked and the amount of cars that are involved. This is a really, you would see this would for sure be a full course yellow in real life as well. So this is a really, really good call here by the admins, and I like the call. A lot of cars involved in that one. Gary Waterworth, Brett Pancari, Andrew Schwartz, a lot of different cars that are involved here. So a lot of cars will be coming back in, and fast repairs? Do we have any? We don't. So there's a lot of guys whose nights are now over.
Take a look here on board with Pancari. You know, two of those drivers, Pancari and Waterworth, playoff contenders. Now, if they DNF in this race, it doesn't mean they're out of the playoffs entirely, out of hunt for that championship. The way that the playoff system works here in FTF is you basically, if you make the playoffs, you then have 6 races, 6 chances to be able to lock yourself into the season finale at Atlanta. If you're not able to do it 1 week, you've got the following week to be able to try again. That's why there are a couple of drivers in the field here tonight that are playoff contenders that did not take the green. We'll document them as the night goes on, but man, a tough area of the racetrack to be able to make your way through, because another thing with visibility, with the nighttime conditions, this track in and of itself, a lot of different blind corners. Around turn 4, it's a blind corner. This area that they're coming up to right here, coming around turn 6, that's an uphill blind corner, so there could be a wreck up there just a couple hundred feet ahead of you. You don't realize it, and by the time you do realize it, it's too late.
Yeah, look, yes and no. You're going to see the smoke that's coming up and over the crest, so you will have some form of awareness in that. And generally, where the cars are parked, it's way off to the left. These drivers will be calling it as well, the layout of the FTF series and the way that these drivers sort of work together. So don't be too worried about that. They'll know what they're doing. They're good drivers, and to be perfectly honest with you, they've had some more difficult courses in the season. I throw my mind back to Bathurst. Bathurst had a lot more blind corners, and we had actually a very clean race there.
4-car of Spencer Ray sits on pit road. Mentioned the fact that there are quite a few of our playoff contenders not in the field here tonight. Nate Stewart, who we are used to seeing driving that 4 machine, is one of them. Not the way that the Apex Action Photography sponsored Toyota Supra wanted to get this race started, as still sitting on pit lane. Brett Pancari was on pit road, actually coming back down pit road for further repairs. Looks like Andrew Schwartz in the 67 actually started from pit road, but Nate Stewart not in the field here tonight. Same can be said for drivers Lucas Palessel, Tristan Hagenstein, and Evan Rice. Those drivers not in the field this evening, did not take the green flag, but again, as stated, they'll have a shot of being able to maybe win their way into the playoffs in the upcoming weeks. Kansas next week, Detroit Belle Isle, the second road course of the playoffs, and then, of course, the last chance at the paperclip short track of Martinsville.
Oh, what a playoff schedule. That is grueling. These cars at Detroit Belle Isle, my word, dear God, no, I don't want to be in that race. No, thank you. That's one of my most hated tracks on iRacing, to be perfectly honest with you.
One of those races you're more than happy to be up in the broadcast booth and down on the racing surface, huh?
Mate, look, I mean, if I was in the playoff contention for Detroit Belle Isle, I think I would still be, I'd just be like, hey, have I got a teammate that needs a spotter for tonight? Does anyone need a spotter? You gonna make me race? Oh.
Got a couple of drivers coming down pit road here as we've hit the 1 to green. Like Tyler Duggan, Nathan Rabideau, Justin Malello, Ashlyn Schleiss, David Cabrera, Rich Jameson, and Bryce Andrews are all coming down pit lane as early evening. Only just a couple of corners, and Brett Pancari's day is done, as he will be retired out of the race, currently unofficially in the 30th position. If Spencer Ray can go out there and turn a lap or two, that would drop Pancari down to 31st in tonight's finishing results. Of course, a lot of drama coming off of last week at Talladega. Justin Malello was the unofficial winner, crossing the start-finish line first, but because he advanced his position going below the yellow line on the final lap, it was then given to second place Lane Tidwell. So obviously Malello looking for some redemption from last week. Still a thrilling race at the high banks of Talladega Superspeedway, and it'll be interesting to see here if these guys, after we've had lap 1 an airborne car, I mean, up at the front it looked like the formation was pretty neat and tidy, double wide all the way through, drivers giving some pretty respectful room. You gotta wonder if that's gonna kind of calm these drivers down just a little bit, because, you know, Scott, you know, the green flag waves, you've been waiting and waiting, and finally you're turned loose and the adrenaline's at an all-time high. Sometimes you need a caution, just calm back down, put things in perspective, and start settling into a long road course green flag run.
I mean, yes and no. I mean, yes, you do want to, and I mean, Spencer Ray's just said in the chat that he's got 31 minutes of required repairs, so he's done. But look, I mean, to be perfectly honest with you, Seth, it's a tricky track. To be perfectly honest with you, these guys cooling it down a little bit, this is probably settling them down a little bit. Yeah, you're a little bit right in terms of those sorts of things, but at the same time, it's just such a difficult track that, to be perfectly honest with you, I think these guys want to get back to green. I don't know if they'll re-trigger this restart single file or double file, because I think the best possible thing on the opening lap that you can do is just extend that chain of cars out a little bit, but at the same time make it better racing. I think it's so difficult. When you talk about going through that first sector, turn 1, you're just skating wide every single time. And when you're trying to get in there too wide, it's very, very difficult. The rear end of these cars wants to rotate around, so much power, so little downforce. That's just the natural behavior of the cars, and it looks like it is going to be a single file restart. Oh, it's double file. It is double file.
Double file. Here is Jonathan Oates in the restart zone, gets us back underway. Kenny Brady's going to be under fire from Blake Reynolds, and we're going to go 3 wide for the race lead there. Going into turn 1, Reynolds is the one to back out of that, but still 3 wide behind them. That's Sean Butler, Alex Kalines, and I think that was Brandon Hucken that made the 3 wide move, and he kept his foot in the throttle from 7th up to 5th on that restart.
Yeah, have a look at these leaders, though. Still side by side, and now the outside is going to be another caution. Yeah, this will be a single file for sure. I think they need to just settle it down a little bit. It's so difficult. You've got cars trying to file in there, and then you think you're clear, and then somebody shoves their nose back in. It's honestly, it makes sense. It's so difficult here in NASCAR-styled vehicles, stock cars, to get these cars around here single file, that double file is really difficult, man.
Couple of Speed Incorporated cars there in the middle of 3 and 4. Ryan Araki was the car facing the wrong direction. Justin Malello, I think, came to a stop, allow his teammate to get turned back around. Let's take a look and see what happened here. He gets a little bit of help from, I think that was the 26, Tyler Gary, getting him around. And boy, that's a tough area of the racetrack there. You see him split him 3 wide, and indeed Malello comes to a stop to allow Naraki to get the thing turned around. But that could have been a lot worse in that section of the track.
There was another issue at the back of the field in turn 1 as well. Rich Jameson was in very, very deep into turn number 1. He was checking up to avoid accidents up ahead of him, as well as 3 wide back there. So there was a fair bit going on, to be perfectly honest with you. The fact that they did call a caution, I think, is probably the best move again. Like, it's so difficult here to get these cars involved and get the cars fired. And you can just see, like, with such a big field, the worst possible thing, especially no fast repair, remember? You don't want cars just filing into these wrecks at 100 miles an hour. And I think a lot of these drivers now are going to maybe flip that switch in their head that says, hey, maybe I just got to give a couple spots here. I don't actually have I don't actually have a fast repair in the bank to protect me, you know. It'll be interesting to see if they do opt to go to single file here, personally.
Yeah, I honestly would think that we would have single file restarts as well. But the only problem with that is I've seen where you take them double file, heading into a corner, they split it out to 3 wide. Somehow, some way, they find a way with single file restarts to still find themselves 3 wide when they get down to the opening corner. So we'll see what the call is going to be here. Maybe the FTF officials will call an audible, but it's been a rough night already for a number of our playoff contenders. We already mentioned Brent Pancari out of the race. Gary Waterworth still getting repairs done on his number 12 from the first caution. He's currently 2 laps down. And you mentioned about the Rich Jameson incident. When we looked back at it, the car that made contact with him, spinning him around, was playoff contender Nathan Rabideau in the 93. So that's 3 of our playoff drivers here in the first 5 laps of the race here at the Charlotte Roval that have run into some kind of an issue.
I think that's just guys maybe coming in and going, I'm a playoff driver, I'm in contention, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to be aggressive, I'm going to grab as many spots as I possibly can. I think it's actually completely and utterly the opposite way around. And we were talking about this on a broadcast we did yesterday, Seth, that's also in playoffs at the moment with Backfire Sim Racing, and there's 2 ways to approach it. If you're up at the head of the playoff contention field, you're coming in and you're just going, a 10th here at Charlotte Roval, that's more than good enough. That's probably my target. 10th to 15th, that's probably good enough. And then alternatively, on the flip side, is the guys that are down at the back, they're like, I have to get out there, I've got to grab spots, I've got to be aggressive. If this goes wrong, well, it was going wrong already. So, you know, I'm trying to give myself the option here. So it's kind of this very, very two-tone setup and the way that these guys are going to approach this race. So it's difficult, man. It's very difficult, and setting up your mindset is so critical to success here at Charlotte Roval.
2 drivers in the field here tonight we've obviously got to keep an eye on. Running 3rd and 5th, Blake Reynolds in the 62 and Brandon Hawken in the 89, because when it comes to road course races, those 2 have kind of been king of the hill. Blake Reynolds so far this season wins at the Indianapolis road course, COTA, the Daytona road course, Spa, Road Atlanta. Brandon Hawken, we saw him go to victory lane in the Tsukuba Nationals, and of course, track you alluded to just moments ago, Bathurst. So these guys are very good when it comes to road course racing. They're up here inside of the top 5. We'll see if either one of them is going to be able to pick up yet another road course victory.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. You know, we're not really 100% sure what's going to happen here. The few guys that are coming down, topping off fuel. I don't think they'll be taking tires at this point. What's the limit on tires? I don't think there is actually a tire limit here tonight either. So, no, there is 4 sets across the 55 laps. There's no wear on these tires at this point in time. They've literally raced for, I think, a total of 5 corners at this point in time as well. So, you know, it's... I mean, there's an option for some guys right at the rear to potentially come down and grab tires, but not everyone will be thinking about tires at this point in the race.
Let's take a look here with the nighttime conditions, what we're dealing with weather-wise. Ambient temperature 65 degrees, the track temperature just a tick above that at 66. Of course, big reason for that is the fact that we have yet to run a full, complete lap under green flag conditions, so not a whole lot of tire heat being put into this racetrack at this point in time. But if we get into a long enough green flag run, is there a chance we could see that track temperature pick up, or is this a long enough road course that it'd be enough time by the time those cars go around that the track could cool itself back down again?
Yeah, look, I don't think course heat is going to be a bigger factor as you potentially think it will be. I mean, it's just not that big a deal, you know. Charlotte, the amount of cars that are out there and the level of heat and pressure that these cars are pushing into the circuit, yeah, it's actually quite high. It's just that the fact that the course itself is just so long that it's not going to be an issue.
It takes these drivers anywhere from 80 to 90 seconds to complete a lap around this road course. Looked like most of the drivers in practice were running in the 1 minute 20 to 1 minute 25 second range. Looks like we are going to be double file yet again for this upcoming restart. Jonathan Oates will be on the inside. Kenny Brady to the top side. 3rd place will be Dalton Cowden. Actually, correction, looks like it's going to be Blake Reynolds in 3rd, Dalton Cowden in 4th. 5th place, Blake Reynolds, Sean Butler in 6th, Alex Kolonix in the 7th position, Matt Spalding 8th, 9th place, Matthew Swack, and 10th is going to be Cole Freilich as Jonathan Oates gets ready to get us back under the green flag. Let's see if these guys can complete a lap under green flag conditions. So far here, 6 laps, 5.5 technically have been run under caution, half a lap's been run under green. We're back underway here at the Roval.
Let's go, boys. Let's settle it back down. 3 wide again!
It's Dalton Cowden that looked up the middle on Blake Reynolds and Kenny Brady. They settle it out, though. It was the 117 that backed out of that situation. Oh, man! just barely hitting that rumble strip and nearly sliding into the passenger side door of the 73 was Blake Reynolds. Nice save there. We nearly had a wreck for the race lead.
Yeah, that could have been disastrous. I mean, you know, who knows what they're trying to do here, what they're trying to get themselves set up for. This is critical, getting these cars in, down, and around this circuit as it currently stands cleanly. So these guys got to settle themselves down, keep your heads forward, boys.
Like they're going to settle out for at least the top 6 or 7. Freilich taking a look there on the outside of Matt Spalding down what's the NASCAR back.
They possibly can. It's because they don't really have a choice. They've got to be aggressive at this phase of the race. A little bit of the circuit as you can. So if you actually watch these guys come through here, you want to head all the way up to the left-hand side of the track on entry here to 3. All the way up to the middle. You run over that rumble strip and it's just basically like the cars bouncing
side.
This is about setting up the straight.
A lot of aerodynamics come into play with this too as well. If you can have somebody behind you running in your tire tracks, gives you that...
Able to, if Kenny Brady went in there just a little bit too hot, all of a sudden the crisscross move prevents...
One of the things that gets me, Scott, is the elevation changes on this road course.
Actual change. Look at the car climb here. All the way up to the crest of what's this? I think this is turn 6.
Ahead of him is the 12 of Gary Waterworth. We're going to jump back to a replay as Dalton Cowden, who was running in the 4th position, encountered an issue. I think this was over in the back straightaway chicane, and I don't think he made any contact with anybody. I think he was trying to check up to not run into the back of Jonathan Oates and may have just knocked them front tires up.
No, he downshifted too early for sure. That's exactly what that looks like. So there's one of two things. So in that position, he's either locked... He might have just locked the rears. He may not have downshifted actually too early, but it looks very, very similar to... Yeah, he's on the clutch because that car is just trying to hop, and it's just, there's no grip in the rear end, so he just pivots it on the rear brake. So that's actually not locked front tires, that's locked rear tires, and it's exactly what happens when you lock the rears. The thing just pivots.
Brady trying to reel Blake Reynolds in. Here's a battle that's been going on for the last couple of laps. Cole Freilich and Alan Balancino mixing it up for 6th. And look at this, Alex Kolonix and Ocean Walsh, they're going to come into this picture along with Matthew Zwack. So throw a blanket over the latter half of the top 10.
Yeah, what a battle this is going to continue on to be as well. Some of these guys are going to look after their tires a little bit better than the others. Undercut is so crucial here. You'll see guys try and undercut each other all night long. And the reason why you'll see that is because once you get the spot, it's so difficult to get that spot up. And the tire fall off is not as much as you need it to be to actually get that spot. So first off, they're going to come out of the pits. They're going to come roaring hard. They're going to come and try and chase you down, which is going to put heat on their tires. By the time they get to you, that grip advantage is just about gone, and it's so difficult to set up that overtake.
Of course, Matthew Zwack, 2nd in the point standings. Jonathan Oates, the current points leader. Right now, those two drivers sitting in playoff positions to battle for the championship by the time we get to Atlanta.
Oh!
Balancino!
He's done. He just towed straight away.
Back, see what happened to him. He was in that great battle up there for around the 6th position, and like this was heading into turn 5. See up ahead of him, Cole Freilich get really loose, and does he get help? Does he just lose it on his own?
No, he gets help. He just gets shouldered.
Oh wow.
That was on the car that was ahead of him. Because he runs wide going into the corner, it's just Freilich, and he tries to pull it up and hold the line, and he cuts back across. Why? Because you want to open up that rejoin to the oval section. It's actually the tightest and most difficult section on the course to go side by side is that next left-hander, and Freilich's trying to open that corner back up, so that's what's caused that one.
That's such a tough break there for Alan Balancino, running up there
inside
the top 10. Yeah, he was. That car was fast. He was up there inside of the top 10, trying to maybe knock on the door of a top 5 run, and now with that toe to pit road, effectively out of the running for a good finish here tonight. Battle for the lead continues to close up. Last time we checked, it was about 0.8 of a second between Blake Reynolds and Kenny Brady. That last time by, 0.2 quicker for the 97, and he is only about little more than half a second off the back bumper of the 62 car. Kenny Brady, I believe, I'll have to double check, but I believe he's looking for his first win on the season.
feel like he won Charlotte?
No, I'm incorrect. You're right. He did. So he's looking for the Charlotte sweep, so to speak, winning the Oval and now trying to win the Roval.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it takes talent to be able to do that. A lot of talent required, in fact, to actually get that done. So if he can do it, all power to him. That's a phenomenal drive, but he's got a long way to go just yet.
Matthew Zwack, as mentioned, he and Jonathan Oates right now, top 2 in the point standings. So far here in the playoffs, we have not had a playoff driver go to victory lane. So if things continue on the trend they are on, we could maybe only just have a mano-a-mano, a 1v1 2-driver battle by the time we get to the season finale at Atlanta. But it's still close of drivers that have a shot of mathematically making their way up there into the top 2. Zwack holds the second position, but only 7 points over Nathan Rabideau. Now, Nate Stewart and Brent Pancari, Gary Waterworth were the next 3 behind. They are either not in the race tonight or have had early issues. So right now, here this evening, if we're looking for a battle of drivers for a playoff position, it might be between the 18 of Zwack and the 93 of Nathan Rabideau, who's done a nice job of recovering after the early contact with the, I believe it was the 86 of Rich Jameson. He's up to the 15th position.
That's a great drive. That's a phenomenal drive. That's actually 2 places higher than where he actually qualified. So that's a phenomenal effort. Clearly, you know, not the fastest car out there tonight, but he's certainly got patience. And the key thing when you're racing here at the Roval is that it's about racecraft. It's about using your head at all stages of the race. If you get too aggressive, if you get too pushy early on, you're just going to kill yourself, kill your own momentum. So you've got to be a little bit more patient. You can't just be aggressive the entire race long, and he's done a great job.
Ryan, our Rocky has taken his machine back to the garage area, so right now scheduled to finish in the 29th position. He'll be the 3rd retiree out of the race. Good battle here between a couple of Ford Mustangs. This is for 5th. Sean Butler looking back at Ocean Walsh. Ocean Walsh was actually one of the fastest cars in practice. Didn't quite get the lap time he was looking for in qualifying, though. Looked really fast, but might have cut the course on his qualifying time because it did not register it. So he had to start all the way back in the 20th position, up 14 spots since then. Yeah,
so more than likely what he's done is, remember how I was talking about using that AstroTurf in the final sector, in that final chicane? Is he's probably gone fractionally too far left, because you can put one tire, effectively, one side of the car onto that, but you can't be aggressive with where you approach it. And because that AstroTurf is actually shaped in a curvature fashion as well, there's one section of it where if you enter it just fractionally too early, it's so easy to get an off track. So I'd say that's probably what he's done and what prevented him from getting that time in.
As we watch this battle for the race lead, and you can correct me on this, I know a little bit about the Charlotte Roval and how iRacing runs this particular track, but might be a little bit of information that I don't know. In NASCAR, if you end up cutting the chicanes on the back straightaway or the front straightaway, you have to come to a stop and then continue on. I believe here on iRacing, though, you cut those areas, it gives you a time penalty.
Yeah, so it's not straightforward a time penalty per se. What it is it's a slowdown penalty, and the longer you take to serve that, it'll actually keep adding on to that penalty. So what the slowdown penalty basically says is that it needs you to give up a certain amount of time, depending upon the number of corners you cut. If you just cut one corner of each of the chicanes, it's I think only a second penalty. But if you cut both, I think it might be 3. Don't get me, don't take that to heart, but I think it might be 3 for both of the corners. You've got to give up 3 seconds worth of time in a sector, and it tracks it live, so, and you've got about 30 seconds to give that time up, so that's the differential there.
Lead change out of turn 10, Kenny Brady to the point. Blake Reynolds not going to give it up that easily. They're going to race this into the chicane, double wide. Looks like Reynolds going to back off. No, he's going to cross him over on the exit of the chicane, try and get the top spot back. But one thing that I noticed there when we were on board with Brady trying to make that move over in turn 8, that transition from the road course section to the speedway section really upsets the back end of the race car. You saw his hands working left, right, left, trying to make sure that thing was planted.
It shouldn't. It really shouldn't. I think it's just the way that he was driving it through that section of the track as well, particularly going in too wide. It's incredibly difficult to get the cars settled back down and actually run too wide through those sections. So it was probably just the nature of he had to hold the car in an awkward manner, in an awkward place that he didn't necessarily want to be. So,
Austin Walsh, as mentioned, has been picking his way through the field, up 15 spots now into the 5th spot. Another guy that's been working his way through the field. Nice to see Andrew Schwartz back on the grid. We haven't seen him for the last couple of weeks. Playoff contender, and of course, as well as mentioned, with the way that the playoff system works, he missed those 2 weeks, but if he were able to pull off some strategy here tonight and get this race win, he is locked into the championship battle at the Atlanta Motor Speedway right now, holding down the final spot inside of the top 10.
Yeah, get in there, gave himself every opportunity. I mean, clearly something's happened that he hasn't been able to attend the last few weeks, and that's unfortunate, but, you know, there's no give up. It's all heart to the end of the race. I mean, he's out there, he's turning laps, he's giving himself every opportunity, and that's exactly what it's about when it comes to time for the playoffs.
Another driver who has made starts in the first 2 playoff races, had a decent run of 7th at Las Vegas, but last week, dismal finish at Talladega, didn't even make it into the second third of the Talladega race, and that's Sean Butler. Right now, he's got his 32 Pennzoil Ford positioned in 6th position, not too far ahead of the 222 of Alex Kalanick, so that could be a brewing battle for P6 in just a couple of corners.
Yeah, keep your eyes on those guys. They're really sort of closing up in that middle of the pack as well. And, you know, there's actually still quite a few battles, and I've got a track map open. I'm just sort of keeping an eye on battle from about 16th through to about 22nd is covered by probably just a couple seconds, just having a quick look at that one. But yeah, things starting to spread out. One of the benefits of, benefits for some people, negatives for others, is the shorter the road course, the more likely you are going to encounter traffic. So we've got quite a short course here, as is the nature of the lap. What are we, qualifying times of minute 20, so we'll be about the minute 22 at this point in time. So it is a very, very short road course. It ticks by very quickly, and one of the small negatives of that is when you catch traffic. But traffic's actually been reasonable tonight. The leaders haven't had to deal with a car yet. They're probably about 10 seconds away from doing so.
And it's interesting, too, because I ended up hearing Steve Letarte today say that Charlotte Roval, in many respects, is very much like a street course. If you mess up, you're going to make contact with something one way or another, some type of wall, some other car, not a whole lot of runoff space. One thing that we had back at the Indianapolis road course when drivers encountered traffic was the difficulty for the slower machines to find somewhere to be able to give the race leaders the optimal line to pass them while not running off the course. Is that going to be something that this traffic they'd be coming up on momentarily that they're going to have to deal with here tonight?
Not necessarily. I mean, the thing is, too, we've got actually quite a fair few damaged cars out there as well this evening, so they're running a fair way off the pace, and, you know, they're doing the best that they possibly can for their current race scenario, and there's not really a whole lot that they can do about that. They're just out there making sure that they're turning laps and keeping their nights alive, at least, for now. So in terms of those sorts of things, those cars in particular won't be too much of an issue, but Charlotte's actually... There's a lot of braking zones where you can just roll out of it as lap traffic, and you can just let those guys on by. So it's not necessarily as difficult, because there are straight sections. You can get to the higher side of both the bank sections, which allows the cars on the lower side on through. And look, I mean, it's not as difficult as Indy, that's for sure, because the problem was Indy's all about corner chains. There's no real, chain, there's little chains. They're not extended, drawn-out chains, so it shouldn't be anywhere near as much of an issue.
Watching some good battling back here outside of the top 10. This is 135 of Zachary Thornton trying to keep 14th place away from Nathan Rabideau. Behind them, you've got a fair group of machines. David Cabrera, Chris Wetz, Matt Taylor, and Tyler Gary. They're all separated by about 2 seconds. 16th back to the 19th position. Dalton Cowden encountered another problem a couple of laps ago. He is now fallen all the way down to 20th, and about 7 laps ago, the 090 of Bryce Andrews encountered an issue. He's been sitting on pit lane for near about 10 minutes now, getting some damage repaired on his Chevrolet.
Yeah, it's so unfortunate for a bunch of guys right throughout the field. I mean, it's street course. Street course is probably the right terminology to use when considering this course and how close the walls are. that name from Latard, sorry, that comment from Latard is bang on. You don't have a lot of wiggle room, and unfortunately there's a few guys out there tonight that have lost that ability to have wiggle room, and they found the fence.
Good run for Matthew Zwack right now in the 8th position. You see him trying to catch up to Sean Butler, and I don't want to say surprising run, but when you look back at a number of the races that Matthew Zwack has run at the road courses this season, they don't really match up to what we're seeing here tonight. We're seeing a 15th place run at the Daytona road course, 14th at Bathurst, but then there's some other numbers that are really jumping out. 20th place at Tsukuba, 36th at Monza, Coda 35th. So the road courses have not exactly been kind to this 18 car, maybe trying to quell the road course curse here tonight.
Yeah, and I mean, good run to him, but Seth, that's the worst possible thing you can say. We've told you don't talk about the drivers, because then they will end up in the fence. Look what you've done, my friend.
Oh, you know, I won't even need a crystal ball when we get to Belle Isle. It's all up for grabs of who's going to be finishing with their car in one piece. Here tonight, though, at the Charlotte Roval, I mean, I know that it's only really been on the NASCAR circuit for a couple of years now, but man, a lot of drivers, whether they like road courses or not, a lot of them take to this road course pretty well.
Yeah, but it's one of those road courses that comes up fairly regularly. And the other thing is, I mean, in terms of things, let's be honest, NASCAR drivers like NASCAR circuits. They drive them a heck of a lot more. Yeah, so they've got more practice, they've got more time, they've got more effort listed into these courses, and that's why they're doing better here. And to be perfectly honest, it's great to see, because if they can apply themselves to a course like this one, and like I said, this is on the more difficult end of the scale, they can actually apply themselves to a lot more road courses, and it's something that I've always wanted, is to see more Americans pick up the road course mantle and take to it.
And 2 early cautions here tonight. One was for a car that was actually airborne in between turns 4 and 5. Since then, we've stayed under the green flag, which brings into question now the pit road strategy. You talked about the benefit of the undercut. I mean, look here at race leader Kenny Brady, who's about to lap, I believe that's Justin Malello in the 53. His best lap so far tonight, the best of anybody, a 121.146. He's out there right now running 122.4s, nearing the 122.5s. So if we kind of take his best lap as opposed to the current lap he's currently on with 22 laps of wear on his tires, there's about, what, a second and a half to possibly be gained on fresh tires.
Yeah, and that's a massive amount. That's what I was talking about, is that undercut. But remember, we've still got our stage break coming up here in a few laps' time as well. And that's going to be critical to try and get through this race as well. So how do they set themselves up? How do they approach that? We've seen previously some of the guys come down the lap before the caution. Now here, remember, critically, you've got to come out ahead of the leaders, or else pitting early doesn't mean a thing. It means that you actually get trapped a lap down and you're forced to take the wave around, which means the entire strategy, the entire play plays against you. So ultimately, with those strategies starting to potentially play out, guys that are within the first half of the lap, when the leaders when they cross the start-finish line, the leader's still within the first half of the lap to them. They've got an option to come down early and potentially grab a whole bunch of track position. Anyone else, they don't really have a choice.
One thing I got to bring up here as well, we see this a lot at road courses. Drivers, the more laps that they put on the tires, the more the tire heat builds up, especially in the fronts, and they have to back up their corners a little bit earlier on lap 20 than they would originally in the first couple laps of the race. In order to get that thing slowed down for pit road speed, I mean, how much is that on the back of these guys' minds with green flag pit stops possibly looming? Because the last thing you want to do, we talk about mistakes on the racetrack costing you a lot of time and not a lot of opportunity to be able to mount a comeback. Same can be said if you make a mistake on pit road.
Yeah, well, I mean, in terms of things, Seth, it's actually a little bit different, because normally when you're thinking about, oh yeah, I'm trying to have a clean pit lane entry, you're not racing in a road course configuration, you're racing in an oval, so the car is naturally geared to want to turn towards that left-hand side. So when you're on the brakes and you lock those rears, you know that the car's going to pivot just because it's so difficult to keep that wheel straight. When you're in a road course configuration, everything's a lot more neutral. The car's not kicked to the left-hand side. The car doesn't naturally want to turn one way or the other. So it's actually a lot easier to get the car back under control should you make a mistake. Now, having said that, yeah, look, I mean, the benefit here is that, and again, this is another feature of road courses, is that you're regularly speeding up on those brakes, slowing the car down. So they've actually got a lot of practice. They're not just coming to pit road and going, oh, I haven't done this for, you know, a long period of time. Oh, I'm in danger here. It's probably a lot easier, I think, coming to pit lane in road course conditions.
You saw there David Cabrera nearly lose his 138 on the front straightaway. Tyler Gary able to get around him, and now Nathan Rabideau, Zach Thornton, Matt Taylor, they all stack up behind his Ford Mustang. That's 4 drivers battling for the 15th position. One thing I'm just going to throw out there, a little spanner in the works. You talk about the fact of coming off the banking there to come to pit lane with the way we have it here at the Charlotte Roval, but we were running the normal speedway race. They're backing it down to 55 miles per hour. Here with the road course conditions, there's an extra 10 miles per hour they got to back it down to 45. So they got to bear that in the back of their minds as well.
Yeah, but then again, I mean, that's something that you practice and you prepare for. I mean, whenever I'm out in a session like this and I'm preparing myself for a league race, pit stops, they're one of the most crucial aspects. If you cannot get the pit stop correct, there's no reason even being out there. You're just throwing the whole race away. So preparing yourself for pit stops is by and large just something that drivers have to do. It's part of their rituals that they go through prior to a race these days. So with that in mind, how do they prepare themselves for the pit stops? During practice, they would have done a green flag pit stop. They would have come at pit lane full speed. And in actual fact, the first couple times, my preferred method is to come down way too fast. The reason why I'm doing that is I'm testing what's the maximum limit. Then I'm looking for a mark that's probably just a little bit shy of that, so I've got my good mark. I'm the kind of guy that, to be perfectly honest with you, unless I have to, I'd rather not push the boundary because, yeah, there's a lot of time to be gained there, but there's more time to be lost, and that's what the issue is. I'd rather sacrifice, let's say half a second, a full second on pit lane entry, than throw risk, unnecessary risk to the win.
So Nathan Rabideau, we jump back to, he lost a couple of spots there coming out of the final chicane onto the front straightaway. You talk about sacrifice. One thing these drivers are sacrificing at this point in time is that rear end grip. And I saw the Justin Malella machine jumping onto pit lane. Not certain if this is a regularly scheduled stop for him or not, but if it is, might start to see some drivers mixing things up on pit road in the next couple of laps as Blake Reynolds with a big slide there out of the final corner. Jonathan Oates is going to get the second position away from him. Reynolds now drops back to the third spot, and that car looks like he's definitely dealing with the loose sensation. Osen Walsh trying to reel him in for that third position. And I'm looking at a couple of these guys that decide to come down under those 2 cautions, top off the fuel tank. Andrew Schwartz up there in the 9th spot. He was last on pit road back on lap number 5, topped off the fuel tank and could stay out maybe an extra lap or 2 over everybody else. The question is, though, would he want to? Because he's done a heck of a job of working his way up through the field into the top 10. Would he lose a top 10 spot when everything cycles around with everybody kind of theoretically undercutting him?
Yeah, so, yeah, he would. Well, it's... Yeah, because he's got to make that pit stop. So the time loss under green flag pit stops far outweighs the time that he would be gaining by staying out. Now, just having a look at the race scenario and how things have played out as well, if they would have needed a green flag stop after this final caution, after the stage, to get to the end of the race, we would have seen everyone in the pits by now. So it is very easily possible to go basically from when that caution comes out to the end of the race now. So that changes things completely and utterly. Do I come down early? That's about the only time that I'm looking for that track position. So, to be perfectly honest, the guys running around in 8th, 9th, and particularly that 67 machine, I think he's got to come down with everybody else and see if he can beat them on pit road. That's literally his only option.
I'm looking at a couple of these guys that have been slowly falling through the field, some of them more so than others, but Blake Reynolds, we saw him starting to drop, also noticing Cole Freilich in the 80 starting to drop through the running order. Nathan Rabideau, saw him lose a couple of spots not too long ago. And, of course, Dalton Cowden, after he had his issue through the back straightaway chicane, he's not been able to recover. So I'm assuming that these would be some of the guys we'd see on pit road, some of the first on pit road, maybe more so out of necessity than in terms of strategy.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it depends. At the end of the day, if you're not going to be able to keep the car on track for the next couple of laps, well, I mean, and the other thing is, if you're about to go a lap down anyway, so let's talk about some of the guys, for example, running in the 24th position at this point in time is Andy Margo. He's already 2 laps down. Coming down pit road and grabbing that stop at this point in time resets these guys back onto the lead lap, or gets them a lap back, because they're going to grab that wave around. So if you're already going to lose that lap, you may as well just come down early anyway. You've got nothing to lose. Rich Jameson in particular, he's for me, he gets himself back onto the tail end of the lead lap field. That's a big strategy call if he's able to do it.
So Kalanick's taking 5th place from Brandon Hawken, and my apologies, I did not notice 5 laps ago Dalton Cowden actually did come down pit road for a green flag pit stop. Right now running last car on the lead lap in the 20th position, so he's already come down to the attention of his crew, and we'll see if he can start making some forward progress with those fresh tires. Andrew Schwartz, Matthew Zwack, they're going to battle for 7th place. Sean Butler was passed by both those drivers in the last 5 laps or so. He's looking on, and we do have another driver now out of the race. That's going to be Chris Wetz in the 71, unofficially scored in 26th. And he may finish there, as some of the other guys below him in the current running order, Bryce Andrews and Alan Valancino, they still sit on pit road 20-plus minutes getting repairs done. So more than likely, that's where Wetz will finish out this race. Another driver now hitting pit road. Playoff contender, our winner from the season opener at Daytona, Jake Poulin, brings the Hellman Chevrolet down to the attention of his crew.
This is a pretty common strategy. The issue here for Jake Poulin is if he comes back out, he's going to come out right behind the leader, so he's lost that advantage. So he has to take, he's then forced to take the wave around, which means he loses that lead lap. There's literally no reason for him to do that. I think he's just misjudged. He's now going to make up 9 seconds to that race leader. If he does not make that time back up before that caution flag gets thrown for the stage, that undercut strategy, this is exactly what I talked about. This is the worst possible timing for Jake.
Didn't get a chance to really see the 4 car of Spencer Ray out on the racetrack, but both he and Cole Freilich, you'll notice, running the ink on their machines. Looks like also, I think that was the 46 of Robert Dorman just up ahead. A lot of drivers in the field running. Oh, and Dorman, right there in your screenshot, he goes around in front of Freilich off of turn 1. Close call there for the driver running in the 11th position. And Dorman now gets the thing pointed in the right direction, will continue on. So local yellow there, but no full course caution. There's David Cabrera going by with the pink numbers on his 138. A lot of drivers sporting the pink here in October for Breast Cancer Awareness Month. And you may have also noticed there when we saw Jake Poulin on pit road, the pit wall also painted pink there. So the track, the drivers all in the supporting breast cancer here in the month of October.
Yeah, that's a phenomenal job by those guys. It's really, really good to see. That's just a great initiative. My family out here in Australia, obviously a little bit different, but yeah, no, look, I mean, you know, it's massively impacted my family, and it's that's, to be perfectly honest, it's one of the best things they can do is just show some support. Thank you so much, guys.
And Spalding taking the 11th position from Cole Freilich. Mentioned that Lucas Palesel not in the field here tonight, but the 45 was locked into the race on owner points, and so Spalding jumping into that Chevrolet here tonight, giving it a good ride, almost inside of the top 10. Speaking of inside the top 10, just had an exchange inside of the top 10. Ashton Schleiss moving up tonight. That's because Kalanick's bringing his machine onto pit road, and he is down and away. Kalanick's qualified on the outside of the front row, so he had one of those first 2 pit stalls here and a very speedy exit off the pit lane.
Yep, so head down, get back out there, and see what you can possibly do. Just keeping an eye on Bryce Andrews is actually still on the session, even though he's a multitude of laps down, so he's probably going to refire the thing and get it back out there because Chris Wetz has actually left the server. He's only got about 10-11 laps that he needs to grab back to Chris Wetz, so that's another position back for him, and I think no, Waterworth's still out on the track, so Waterworth is still losing time, so that's a potential, but it's going to take a lot of work for him to get Gary Waterworth.
Well, turn 1 is 2 for 2 in consecutive laps of getting Robert Dorman. You saw him facing the wrong direction once again with oncoming traffic, and that's the race leader Kenny Brady about to bypass him, putting the 46 now 3 laps down, I do believe. 2 or 3 laps down. We'll See what the update is. 2 laps down now for the 46 car, who I think he'd be pretty happy if he didn't have to go through turn 1 here for the next couple of laps or so. Brandon Hawken, 2-time winner at road courses this season. He's coming down for his first pit stop of the night.
Yeah, we'll see if this is going to work out in his favor. I mean, it's that opportune time, isn't it? It's right on that limit now. Do the guys come down? Do they opt to go for something a little bit different? There's opportunity in the water, and there's a whole bunch of drivers now coming through pit road.
And it looks like that would more than likely be the only time we'll see Brandon Hawken on pit road. 30 laps on those tires and 25 laps to go, so no doubt, no need to come back down pit lane for him. Some more drivers hitting pit lane. It's a couple of Tylers. Tyler Duggan in the 42 and Tyler Gary in the 26. Those drivers had actually made their way up inside of the top 15.
That's an interesting drive, yeah. And look at Dalton Cowdens. He's made a whole bunch of time over Gary and Duggan, so there's an opportunity here. Remember what I said about getting into pit road and getting back out before that leader comes on by. Have a look at Tyler Duggan. Have a look at where he comes out in response to things. So Tyler Gary, just ahead of him, gets very loose in that turns 3, turns 4 scenario.
Jump back there because it was going to be a close battle for third place between Ocean Walsh and Blake Reynolds, but the 37 ducks onto pit lane, as does the 73, so the inverted numbers, Fords both of them, coming down for their final pit stop of the day. A couple other drivers towards the latter half of the top 10 coming in this time. It would be the 67 of Andrew Schwartz and the 18, second in the playoff standings, Matthew Zwack.
Yeah, let's see if Zwack can really get that thing moving forward. I mean, he's making progress. Now he's come down pit road. This is going to make for an interesting lap. And have a look at Schwartz in behind him as well. This is going to be critical for both of these guys' races.
Of course, for Matthew Zwack, he'd love to be able to go to victory lane, but more importantly, he just wants a consistent run here tonight to keep him up inside of the top 2 in the standings, because, again, top 2 in points. By the time we finish up at Martinsville, they are battling for the championship at Atlanta no matter what. Kenny Brady, the race leader, coming down pit lane. Let's see if Blake Reynolds and Sean Butler, who are yet to make pit stops, if they're going to come this time. Nope. Reynolds going to stay out an extra lap. 32 of Butler is still over on the back straightaway, so it'll be a while before we know if he's going to be heading for pit road or not.
Yeah, let's keep an eye out and forwards. I mean, look at the guys that are running extremely long here. Kenny Brady's made his way through the pit lane. Now Blake Reynolds will assume that lead. You got a feel from Blake Reynolds. He's on the bare minimum of fuel now. He's right at the maximum limit. So if he can just get one more lap here, maybe 2 more laps, he's going to put himself in a real advantageous position. He's going to have one of the freshest sets of tires out here. A lot of pace towards the tail end of the race and the ability to make those overtakes when it counts.
There's Blake Reynolds, a NASCAR Coke Series iRacing driver, and obviously he's been at the Charlotte Roval a time or two, knows a lot about strategy, but I'm kind of questioning this move of staying out, especially with the fact that we saw him not only lose the race lead, but he was starting to free fall outside of the podium before these green flag pit stops began. And he's one of the drivers that is deciding to stay out the longest. I mean, obviously that car was not handling to his liking as those tires worn down. I would have thought he might have been one of the first ones on pit road, but that's obviously not the case.
Every time we've talked about this, Seth, and we're like, oh, one of these drivers needs to pit early. This guy's really going to come down very, very early. They've got to do this, they've got to do that. They always go for the opposite strategy, and I definitely agree with you that I think Blake Reynolds needed to come down nice and early. But, yeah, I mean, he's gone in the opposite direction. So what he's trying to do here is he's basically extending the pain on this stint, which means that the weak section of his race, alternatively, this could have been, the reason why he was dropping a long way could have been for a couple of reasons. One, he was trying to look after those tires a little bit, which meant that he was under-driving the car excessively. Number 2, could have been looking for some massive, massive fuel saving. That means his stop maybe on this next stint might be just that fraction shorter. We'll see how that goes for him. But ultimately, he's going to have a lot less fuel in the car if that's the case for the final run of the flag. And that means less wear on the tires, because tires have to wait, move less weight around. There's going to be a car in the fence just in front of him, which is Rabbitohs, and that's critical that he gets by that. So that's really nicely worked from Blake Reynolds. But now the major problem from him is the gap from him back to Kenny Brady and Sean Butler. 11 seconds back to Brady, 24.5 seconds back to Ashton Schleiss, who's just taken that position away from Sean Butler. This will actually, if these guys keep fighting, this massively works itself in Blake Reynolds' favor.
Contact. Ashton Schleiss into Butler as they took a 3 wide. He's going to almost chop off the nose of Alex Kalank. Schleiss out of shape there as well, out of turn number 5. I mean, that was a close call with about 3-4 drivers, some on old tires, some on new tires, all trying to figure out where they're going to be situated by the time they get to the speedway section.
Yeah, and I think, oh man, look at that mess. 3 wide. Somebody trying to send it down the middle, somebody trying to send it down the outside. Look, to be perfectly honest, the fact that they got 2 cars through there side by side on all the tires, that's actually really, really good driving. Sean Butler's now moved himself into a really, really good position, but Jonathan Oates needed to get that move done on those fresher tires. It was a little bit aggressive, and now he's got Oates and Walsh immediately under his rear bumper, and those guys have got identical lap tires as well. Blake Reynolds is in.
He's in, as is Ashton Schleiss. Looks like Butler's staying out an extra lap, but I mean, look at what we've got now. Blake Reynolds hasn't even gotten to his pit stall. He's in his pit stall now, I think, but he has dropped down to now 7th. He's going to probably drop down to 8th. This is a guy that was running 3rd when the green flag pit stops began, and now he's going to have a net loss of 5, 6, 7 positions when everything settles around. I don't know if 20 laps is enough time to be able not to come back, especially with the fact that he and Kenny Brady, when the two were battling for the race lead, they were running equal lap times.
No, this is more than enough time for him to ascend his way back onto the podium. So you got to remember that when the green flag stop started, he was falling, so he hadn't looked after his tires massively. Now he's got a 4-lap advantage, so Sean Butler still hasn't come down pit road yet, and he's going to overtake him after making the stop. So Sean Butler's going to lose that spot for sure, so that wasn't even a spot he was fighting for, and Sean hasn't been able to force him to fight for that position, which means that's another position gained in terms of Blake Reynolds' favor without putting excess wear on the tire. Now he's right here with Brandon Hawken. This has played into his hands because Butler has slowed up Hawken, brought Hawken back to him. He can get by Hawkins a lot earlier on in this stint. He's actually played himself into a reasonable situation. I don't think he can get back to the race lead, but P2 isn't out of the question.
As we mentioned, the fact Reynolds and Hawken, both of them very good on the road courses. 2 wins for Brandon Hawken, and I believe 5 wins at road courses this season for Blake Reynolds. Of course, Blake Reynolds as well, trying to keep that 62 up there in owner points. The owner points changed a ton when the playoffs began because all of the drivers that were inside the playoffs automatically, or in the top 10 I should say, automatically moved into a playoff system, if you will, for the owner points. Right now, the 62 sits 9th in those 10 teams, and right now the 18, Matthews Whack, that team is the top of the board, 1 point over the First 4 Racing team, which fields the 73 of Jonathan Oates. So obviously trying to get that 62 that led the owners' points the majority, well, pretty much the entire regular season, back up there to the top of the board. And right now battling with Brandon Hawken for that 5th position. Up at the front, though, it is, I don't want to say a walk in the park because there is traffic to deal with up ahead here, but Kenny Brady, he's got over 15 seconds before you get back to the 2nd place running Jonathan Oates, who might be in a battle with Ocean Walsh momentarily.
Oh, Sean Butler's disconnected from the server, so he was running quite well. Something's happened to him in this last lap.
Wondering if that car might have run out of fuel.
Well, I mean, maybe, but no, he spun it. He spun it and ended up in the barrier. He made a stop.
Oh, we got another car spun out there. Andy Margot there in turn 1. Man, that 2nd place battle nearly turned into just one driver leaving the vicinity, as I think it was Oates was on drivers left of that battle, and they had to both give each other enough room to get around that 48 who was sitting perpendicular in the lower racing groove.
It was Blake Reynolds too. He's got the run on Brandon Hawken. He's down the inside with those better tires, and Hawken just says, hey, look, yeah, again, I'm not going to fight this. There's no reason to fight this. I'm on the outside for the next 2 corners. I've got the longest way around. I need to drive it perfectly, and I've got all the tires. I'll just concede this one and cost me as minimal time as possible.
Blake Reynolds with pretty clean racetrack ahead of him. Kenny Brady, on the other hand, you see there's some traffic he's going to have to deal with. These are drivers that are on the tail end of the lead lap, including 3rd in the playoff standings, Nathan Rabideau's 93. He just put Jake Poulin in his rearview mirror. Tell you what, it's kind of been 50-50 here tonight for playoff contenders, either doing good or doing horribly at the Charlotte Roval, which again I think has a lot of these guys that are on the not so good side, breathing the sigh of the relief in the fact that even though they may not leave Charlotte Roval here tonight with the finish they were looking for, they've still got a shot in the upcoming races to clinch themselves a spot in that battle for the championship in Atlanta.
And that's just it, you know, keep forcing yourself ahead. Keep your eyes ahead. And I'm just keeping my eyes right now on that run from Blake Reynolds. Remember, like I said, his tires are very, very good at this point in the race. He's about 20 seconds, 24, you know, 20 to 22 seconds, I think it is, back from the race lead. But he's the fastest car on track, and he's the fastest car on track by a reasonable margin. It's going to be a second a lap. He needs more than that to be able to get all the way back up to Kenny Brady, but that's more than enough to overhaul every other car ahead of him. So this is a really good job for Blake Reynolds, and he can push now. He doesn't have to worry about conservation.
Also helped him with the fact that Brady was dealing with that traffic. Last time by Kenny Brady at 122.9. Blake Reynolds on those fresh tires, 122.0. And that was with hitting that position of 5th place away from Brandon Hawken. Here's the battle for second. And while right now it looks like just a 1v1 battle, keep an eye there on the further back portion of your screen. That's the 222 of Alex Kolonix, just a little more than a second behind. So it could be a 3-man fight for this second position. And oh yeah, that's Blake Reynolds back there also. So right now we got about 4 drivers battling for that runner-up position. Again, all this taking place about 15.5 seconds behind our race leader.
Yeah, but they're actually making a little bit of progress. I've just taken a look. Blake Reynolds, this last time by, is 20.2 seconds back, so it's not going to happen. A 21.3, massively faster. Actually goes equal with Kenny Brady. So Kenny Brady actually had a really good run through that lap, but a second faster than the next 3 cars ahead of him. So he is closing up on this pack at a rate of knots. And remember, when he gets here, he's got the freshest tires, so he's got the best opportunity to cut his way through this pack of what's going to be 4 when he gets there.
Now, I'm going to bring something up that I did not mention, and we've kind of talked about this in the first 2 playoff races. Jonathan Oates right now is the points leader. Another scenario that we have not had in the last couple of weeks. Granted, we didn't have a Grand National Series playoff driver go to victory lane, but we also did not have a Grand National Series driver in the playoffs be the highest finisher. And so therefore, Jonathan Oates, running in second place as a playoff contender, would get, and I'll put this in air quotes, he would get the win here tonight, which would lock him into the playoffs no matter what. So he's still sitting in a situation where he could make it in on points, but if he's able to hold on to this position and not drop back, I believe, to 7th, where Andrew Schwartz is at, he would be the highest driver receiving Grand National Series points in the running order and lock himself into the season finale through a win.
Are we 100% certain that's the way that plays out? Because that's a difficult... Okay, alright,
so
no worries.
The way that it worked, so just to explain how it happened with the last 2 weeks, how we did not have a driver win their way in. We had Brian Mercurio go to victory lane at Las Vegas. Second place was Jordan Worth. He was a Grand National Series points paying driver.
Here we go, hang on. Move from Ocean Walsh. Send it down the inside, heading it.
Yeah, cross him over here, maybe? Let's see.
Oh, maybe.
Take a look.
He'll have a crack here at the chicane for sure.
Absolutely.
If he's close.
See if we can get the run there. And I think the reason he's kind of forcing the issues is Alex Kolonix is starting to reel these guys in, and Blake Reynolds not too far back either.
And he's aware that these guys are coming, so this is critical. This is massive. Both of these guys want to get their elbows out. Now, the issue for both of these guys here is that the more that they fight, the more time they lose to the other guys. So I think in Ocean's mind, I think he needs to follow him and Jonathan Oates until Oates makes a mistake and he just sends it immediately. He doesn't have that option. He's got to go. But having said that, he's only got probably another 2 to 3 laps to get this move done anyway before Kolonix and Reynolds arrive on the scene.
3 blue ovals and a Toyota going to battle it out here for second place. And you talked about the fact of them battling with each other, losing ground to the drivers behind them, also losing ground to Kenny Brady up ahead. The gap is now grown to 17.5 seconds.
This is where Oates was weak last time by. So this is where Ocean Walsh is trying to position that car and trying to get his way to the inside. Oates drifted wide last time by, and he just wants to send it. There's not really a window there, and here comes Kolonix.
Big run there for Kolonix heading into turn 8, and now nose to tail for these three. Heading on to NASCAR turn 1 and heading for that back straightaway chicane. Talked about the 37, maybe setting up the 73 when we get into that chicane. I wonder if Kolonix has a contingency plan if he encounters them.
Here it comes, big send from Walsh. Now this plays right into Kolonix's hands. He'll get a huge run off the corner here, but the next braking zone, it's very difficult to get the car stopped. Kolonix actually bailed out of it, and now Reynolds is right here.
Take a look at this train from second back to fifth. Oates is the engine, and
Here
Reynolds is the caboose.
Down the inside from Walsh. This will push him wide. Yeah, he manages to muscle his way through,
Ooh.
and now Kolonix gets contact to the rear end here, which means Reynolds will get by for sure.
Did you see there how the 73 and the 222, the two of them caught so much air that the cars kind of bogged down when they landed? That allowed Ocean Walsh to pull away and Blake Reynolds to have a shot at both of them when they got onto the front straightaway.
So that's actually incorrect, Seth. It wasn't the cars bogging down. It was them having to bail out of the throttle, wait for the car to balance itself back out again, because if they tried to get back to the throttle, car just spins every single time.
Brandon Hawken back there in the 89 as well. So very close vicinity for second back through sixth place. Ocean Walsh now up to the runner-up position. Blake Reynolds looking to move back into the podium, trying to get around Jonathan Oates. And again, these drivers, the 37, the 62, the 222, actually, let me double check there on the 222. No, he runs for cup points. So these guys would not affect Jonathan Oates getting the, and again, in air quotes, the theoretical Grand National Series win here tonight. Just again, to go back quickly and explain how we do not have a driver locked in via win for the first two races. Mentioned about Jordan Worth finishing runner-up to Mercurio. He was the highest Grand National Series points-paying driver there, so he theoretically took away a win opportunity from drivers. And then last week, with Lane Tidwell picking up the victory, he is a driver that receives Grand National Series points, so no driver was able to get the win as a playoff contender there. So, opportunity here tonight, though, for Jonathan Oates if everything stays the way it is.
Yeah, we got back there eventually to talk about those point scenarios. So difficult. And I mean, in terms of a driver, you need to know who you're actually racing and who you're not. So, I mean, Jonathan Oates, he's got a job to do here, and I'm not 100% sure if he's aware of who he's actually racing, but he needs to be. I hope he's got a spotter. I hope he's got somebody on board that's just telling him, hey, you actually don't need to race these guys. Might be just an opportunity to let them go. We're only competing with one guy and he's a mile and a half back. Let them just go and just cruise from here to the end of the race.
And now I just have to go back and re-say everything that I just said. Everything that I just said there was incorrect in terms of Oates being in a win-you're-in scenario, because I just recognized that Ocean Walsh is actually a Grand National Series points-paying driver, and he's running in second place.
Now he's got to turn that mixer back up again, and I mean, Blake Reynolds is probably the best possible thing to happen in this series of events, but the problem is, I think Reynolds is... Remember how he fell away through the middle part of the stint, and then at the back end he was just limping sort of to the end of the pit stop. So I think Reynolds might have reached that point whereby he's starting to fall away now.
Back to Matthew Zwack in the 18. Nobody out the windshield, nobody out the rearview mirror, just holding down the 8th position. And the guy that he's battling for that second spot in the standings, Nathan Rapido, currently mired back. First car one lap down in the 16th position. So right now, mission accomplished if you're the driver of the NOS Supra, as looks like he will preserve that top 2 position in the points heading into Kansas next week.
Trying to keep my eyes on the times that are happening here. Oates and Walsh are actually doing similar times. For me, the lines where Ocean Walsh was trying to throw the car in, they're very aggressive on tire wear and very aggressive on tire heat. So he needs...
Sorry to cut you up there. We're on board here with Blake Reynolds, and both he and Jonathan Oates pancaking their right side of their machines coming off of turn 7 and heading for turn 8.
That's tricky because that run back out onto the oval, it actually can break the right front suspension, which means night over for these guys, especially with no fast repairs. So they've got to be very careful with how they make contact with it. You make the slightest contact there, and anything related to a GT car, so I'm talking GTE, GT3, P-Cup cars, those sorts of style cars, breaks the right front suspension every day of the week.
Of course, that wall there in 7 and 8, it's kind of a double wall separating the cars in that vicinity of the racetrack from the drivers that are entering here into 1 and 2. There you see right over there, that is turn 8 onto the speedway section. So that was the 135 of Zachary Thornton, the lap machine, getting out of the way of these race leaders. And Kolonix was trying to reel in Blake Reynolds. Lost a little bit of ground there on the front straightaway. Meanwhile, Reynolds trying to get Jonathan Oates and get Brandon Hawken looming back there as well. Right now, up here inside of your top 5 is really the best battle on the racetrack.
Here comes Seth. Here it comes. He's right there. Blake Reynolds. He's going to have to throw it on Oates here. And again, Oates, use your head body. Just let it happen. It might be the best thing for your race.
I would definitely agree with you on that as well. Yeah, if you're Jonathan Oates, big picture race. Because right now, you're the only playoff contender that's up inside of the top 5. You're going to get really good points here today. You're not in the conversation for the victory. He's currently running about 23 seconds behind Kenny Brady. So yeah, big picture race, because who knows with some of the tracks we've got coming up. I keep mentioning it, but it's because it's one of those tracks you don't know what's going to happen. Detroit Belle Isle. I mean, talk about a wild card race right in the middle of the playoffs. Usually it's the super speedways or the short tracks we look at as the places where the moving and shaking can take place, but here in FTF, it's got to be that road course that looms front and center.
Yeah, for sure. It's a big question mark, and it's a big danger zone for a lot of these guys. Just keeping my eye on it. I've been on board with Blake Reynolds the last couple laps. Jonathan Oates is running a really shallow entry line to a lot of the corners, which is basically, effectively, it's a block, but it's not at the same time. It's just positioning your car in an awkward space such that your competition can't really show the nose, or else they'll have it chopped off, and you know, that gap's going to disappear. Here it comes! Was that contact? I think that might have been contact between the front end of Blake Reynolds and the rear of Jonathan Oates. Oates is wide here. This is done. This is done.
And we've had an issue apparently with the 26 of Tyler Gary. Let's see if we can find it. Oh, wow. Completely blew the back straightaway chicane, which says to me he might have been calling it an early evening right then and there, and he has gone back to the garage area. So I guess if you're going to go out in style.
Go out in a blaze of glory.
Yep. It's going to drop down at least to the 20th position, it looks like. With the number of laps we've got left, maybe down to 23rd. Gary Waterworth would have to complete another 8 circuits to be able to bypass him and move up another spot. Definitely
There's actually time for Gary Waterworth if he's still out there and he's turning laps. I mean, there's exactly enough time, so potentially a 24th place finish for him, but that'll promote Gary Waterworth, which is a great result from him considering all the damage and issues he was involved in early on. The crucial factor for me now, Seth, how does Blake Reynolds attack the remaining laps of this race? Because he's got the freshest set of tyres. He's already made up 0.3 of a second in the opening sector of the lap on Ocean Walsh. Then he throws it away in the next sector. So for me, it looks like he's having issues trying to get the power back to the car, but the initial turn-in ability of the car is actually really, really good for him. So it's sort of that long, loaded double right-hander where he's losing a lot of his time. So it'll be interesting to see what this next sector time looks like.
Yeah, if you look at the lap times of the 37 and the 62 this last time by, about maybe 5/100ths quicker was Blake Reynolds. One thing that I'm wondering here too, we know that Blake Reynolds stretched it the furthest of any of our race leaders there when we had that round of green flag pit stop. So he's got the fresher tires for the entirety of this run. But is there a point though where basically his tires wear down and equalize to everybody else no matter when they came down pit road?
Yes and no. The major issue in my mind is that they've both Ocean Walsh and Blake Reynolds have had to put pressure on their tyres and be perhaps a little bit more aggressive than they would have liked to, because they've had to make that move on Jonathan Oates. Now, they've both been banked up in behind Oates for probably 3 or 4 laps when they didn't really want to be, and that just keeps building because you're putting the car in an awkward position, which means you overload the tyres a little bit more. So I think right now, if Kolonix was just watching all of this and just using his head and just keeping everything fresh, he would be in the best situation, but he's got the oldest tyres of the whole bunch. Right now, though, I think he's in a really smart setting up way, and ultimately, it comes down to Blake Reynolds. We just seen how easy it is to defend once he gets up there, but lap traffic, it's tricky, Seth. It's really, really tricky for these guys.
hard to tell. I think Jake Poulin is dealing with some connection issues. Keeps graying out on my telemetry and then reappearing. Right now running 4 laps down, though, as a result. In the 21st position, ooh, got a car cutting the course there, but I think it was Robert Dorman trying to get out of the way of Kenny Brady, who has had quite a bit of traffic to deal with here in these last couple of laps. Just behind him at Orange Machine, I believe that might have been the 86 of Rich Jameson. No, I'm sorry, that was the 042 of Tyler Duggan. As at this point in time, Kenny Brady has put all drivers, with the exception of the top 10, off the lead lap. Next driver that he would be trying to lap, that would be running in that 10th position, would be Matt Spalding, and he's only about 4 seconds behind him. Well, less than that, maybe 4 car lengths here as they head towards NASCAR Turn 1, Road Course Turn 8.
Yeah, it's tricky. At this point in the race, Matt Spalding is actually, he's out of contention of the cars ahead, but he's still got a margin that he needs to maintain to the cars behind. So ultimately what he's trying to do is he wants to let Kenny Brady go at an opportunity which isn't going to lose him a lot of time, which will be on acceleration right here. And then he'll just duck back in behind Kenny Brady. He'll lose about 0.3 of a second, but which won't be a massive amount to tire Duggan. And Duggan's got a whole host of cars that are going to start raining down on him. He's coming on the crit.
As we mentioned, Kenny Brady trying to go for the Charlotte sweep. Won at the Speedway earlier on this season, back in the middle of June, and now trying to win at the Roval. After getting around pole sitter Jonathan Oates, it has been all 97 car. He has dominated this race. Certainly a far cry from what we saw back during the Speedway Charlotte race, where he led only 18 laps in that one en route to the victory. But certainly, I guess, Charlotte, North Carolina playing the cards in his favor, as he is going to be about 5.5 laps away from capturing his second checkered flag here in Concord, North Carolina.
Sorry, Seth, it's lunchtime over here. I'm still trying to stuff some food down my throat. To be perfectly honest with you, I'm keeping my eyes on the margin. Kenny's he's in conservation mode. There's minimal risk, stay out of everyone's way, pick cars off, but only when they let you do it. You're not really shoving the nose there. You've got 20 seconds, and you've only got a couple laps left to go. It's 4 seconds a lap that the other cars need to make up, so you can spin the car and you'll still lead this thing. Critically, though, for the battle between Ocean Walsh and Blake Reynolds, time is starting to run out. But even more critically, Ocean Walsh, the last time around, nearly put a second back over Blake Reynolds. Blake Reynolds had a lot of traffic, which basically means that when that happens, there would be a number that you're trying to drive by. I need to be 0.3, 0.5 of a second quicker than the car ahead every single lap. Well, when you lose time, you lose that time, but you also lose another lap, which means that your calculations just get massively more important.
Ooh, problems for the 222 of Alex Kolonix. He was battling with Jonathan Oates through that chicane. All of a sudden he went way wide. It looked like that car was starting to slow. I'm not sure what was up with him, but looks like he's back under power now. Talk about traffic. Brandon Hawkins back here in a bunch of traffic. Nathan Rabideau just ahead. Behind him is the 888, I do believe, of Matt Taylor. And he's had to deal with these two for the second half of that lap. Still actually stuck in the lap car sandwich as he holds that 6th position.
Yeah, and have a look at the drive from Dalton Cowden, Seth. He's had a difficult night, off sequence on pit. Actually, you know what? Cowden may make the end of this race. That's a phenomenal drive, because he's tried to undercut as massively as he possibly can. And to be perfectly honest with you, I think he ended up spinning it. Things just haven't gone his way. So if he can just manage to survive and grab a 13th place out of this, look, you'd say there's a lot of opportunities left out there on the table, but sometimes you just got to take what you got.
Saw him early on in this one, up inside the latter half of the top 10, spin out in that back straightaway chicane, drop down to around the 20th position. Right now, up inside the top 15 in 13th place as the battle for 4th place continues between Oates and Kolonix. Kolonix trying to close the gap back up between himself and the 73. 4 laps to go here at the Charlotte Roval for Kenny Brady. We've got 9 drivers running on the lead lap. By my last count, we've got 21 drivers that are running on the racetrack. These drivers already having to deal with 2 chicanes, one on the back straight, one on the front straightaway. Another driver that they've had to deal with that's been a bit of a moving chicane here tonight is that 46 car of Robert Dorman. We saw when we were following that battle for 4th place a couple of laps ago, him spun around yet again, this time out of the exit of turn 4. So it just goes to prove, you know, Kenny Brady right now running 20 seconds ahead of 2nd place still has to keep his awareness about him because you never know what could be around the next corner.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, I've led, to be perfectly honest with you, I've led endurance races by multiple laps at some point. Just when you had that really clean run, you've nailed everything in, the setup's great, and things have been going great. You calm down, final stages of a race, inside the last hour, you got 2 laps on somebody. All of a sudden, you come around a corner and there's a car just parked on the racing line. There's nothing you can do. None of your spotters were able to give you the warning, and they're just parked in such an awkward spot where there's only a 1-line groove through it. That does happen. It does make itself a notable factor, and that's racing sometimes. Sometimes there's just nothing you can do. So ultimately, Kenny Brady's got to keep the eyes up. He's got to keep searching. He cannot relax at any stage here. That's the critical factor.
Saw some blue cones go flying there off the nose of the 168 of Ashton Schleiss as he's trying to get 8th position away from Matthew Zwack. They do have a slower lap machine not too far ahead of them. That, I believe, is the 86 of Rich Jameson, so he could come into play in this battle just inside of the top 10 in the closing stages. Couple of Supras there. Zwack trying to keep Ashton Schleiss in the rearview mirror. Schleiss has made a couple of charges to the back bumper, and looks like the 18 got a much better exit there out of that final chicane onto the front straightaway. He'll now put the 86 of Jameson in his rearview mirror. Ashton Schleiss looks to do the same up ahead of them. That battle for 4th place still close, about 5 car lengths between Jonathan Oates and Alex Kalines, but at least for the time being, either Oates has been able to pull away from the 222 or the 222 is backed off and is getting ready to maybe mount some more momentum here in a final charge for that 4th position here in the closing stages. One way or another, though, it's not nearly as close a battle as it was about a lap and a half ago.
I think there's just been some lap traffic over a period of time that's just been getting in there, and it's just been frustrating Kalines a little bit. And I think he overdrove the car for a couple of laps. I think he's reset himself now, and he's actually starting to come back at Jonathan Oates. But it's tricky. They're both biting on the edge of their tires. Remember, Kalines came down on lap 30, and Jonathan Oates was lap 32. So you'd say that Oates should theoretically have the better car. But they've been on these tires for so long now that if Kalines has been looking after this thing, he hasn't actually had to pass anyone for position, and Jonathan Oates has been racing 2 separate guys, so there's a good chance that Oates put a little bit extra wear on those tires.
Close there with Matthew Zwack trying to pull the 68 of Ashton Schleiss back with the side draft there through NASCAR 3 and 4. Schleiss got to complete the pass, though, around the 18. Saw a car stopped back there in the restart zone. I think that was Justin Malello. Might have been pulling off there to let some lead lap cars on by. As coming through the final couple of corners is that 97 of Kenny Brady, the unsponsored Ford Mustang, about to head through the final chicane. He will see the white flag one more time around to try and complete the Charlotte sweep here in the FTF Grand National Series.
And I tell you what a phenomenal race it's been for Kenny Brady. I mean, he's run an amazing race. Like, it's just been clean. He recognized that he had to get aggressive early on, and he did. He got that position right at the point that he needed to. He didn't force anything to happen. He was just sitting there, just patient, and he's just driven off into the sunset ever since.
Kenny Brady coming into tonight had only taken part in 2 other road course races this season. The Daytona road course, where he finished in the 5th position, and he took part in one of the Tsukuba National races where he finished in 37th. But here tonight, he will be looking to put a 2 in the win column. 2nd checkered flag of the season, 2nd checkered flag here at the Charlotte Motor Speedway. Granted, different configurations, and there is nobody out the windshield for him to have to deal with, so now it's all about hitting his marks, and look how conservatively he kind of went there through that back straightaway chicane. You don't want to make a mistake here on this final lap when you've got over a 20-second cushion back to your next competitor.
Yeah, and I'm actually just having a look back. Ocean Waltz had a really tricky first sort of couple sectors on his lap. He's got 3.5 seconds back to Blake Reynolds now. It was actually a lot more at the start of the race, at the start of this final lap, and that's just because of lap traffic. So lap traffic's still playing into it at the tail end of things. So congratulations to Kenny Brady.
Crossing the line to win. There's an idea of what 20 seconds is on the racetrack. Him crossing the line. Ocean Walsh was just making his way through the middle of the back straightaway chicane, but he will come around and get the second position just back there. Heading into the chicane, you see the 62 of Blake Reynolds. He's going to complete the podium here tonight. Jonathan Oates, he'll keep himself up there. Oh, loops it around. Might have had some contact between himself and Colonix. Colonix comes to a stop to let the 73 either back up. Brent Hawken rather says thank you very much, and he's going to pick up 2 spots there in the final corners, moving up from 6th to 4th.
That's an awkward last corner, and I mean, that's difficult. That's really, really difficult. I'm just having a look at the positioning coming into that last corner, and Jonathan Oates, basically, they get in the braking zone. Road course ruling is generally you don't want to move in the braking zone, and for me, I think he did move a little bit to the right-hand side as they were coming in. He still held it. You know, remember when I said that line coming into that last chicane? You had to get out onto the AstroTurf or only on the left-hand side. So he's parked it basically on the middle of the road, and Colonix has come in there with a head of steam and said, look, last corner, last lap, I've got to go for it, and he's trying to pull the car up, and Jonathan Oates is just in a difficult position for him to try and make the pass.
Looking at there from that camera angle, I'm wondering if a little gap whack didn't come into play. You talked about him seeming to move right. I almost wonder if he got a little hit from behind that kind of off-centered him, moving him off that direction.
There was an initial no, I don't think it was, to be perfectly honest with you, Seth. Like, there was an initial contact, and that sort of pushes Oates a little bit deeper into the braking zone, and then he sort of he wants to still turn into the corner. He's trying to arrest the car at the same time. There's nothing in that. There's no gap whack that's caused that one. In my mind, I think Jonathan Oates is allowed to park the car down the inside. But the issue is, it's a last lap move. I mean, he's always going to try and dive bomb it into the last chicane there. I think you've still got priority. I don't know. I just, from how far back Colonix was, I don't think there was any reason for Jonathan Oates to try and defend that. He was never going to make the move happen. You had the inside line through the second part of the chicane. So that decision making, it is what it is.
Whether Colonix felt it was his fault or not, or if you wanted to just make sure that
it definitely was.
Avoid a post-race penalty, you saw him come to a stop. Let the 73 gather it back up. Oates will finish in 5th, and Colonix will finish in 6th. And that was Ashton Schleiss actually tested to see if it's possible to go over that wall separating turn 1 from turn 8. And the answer is yes, but your car is definitely going to be completely totaled in the end result, as Kenny Brady burning it down for the 2nd time this season at the Charlotte Motor Speedway here tonight at the Roval configuration. Here's a look at the finishing results, and as mentioned, Brandon Hawken saw him kind of keep his foot in the throttle. Kind of reminded me a little bit of a couple of years ago when Kyle Larson kept his foot in the throttle to be able to pick up that final playoff position. Yeah, Brandon Hawken saw those positions there at the end and got himself from 6th up to 4th behind Reynolds, Walsh, and our winner, Kenny Brady. Good runs for some of these other playoff contenders here tonight, though, as well. Andrew Schwartz, nice to see him back in the field. He brings it home 7th. Matthew Zwack, he, along with Jonathan Oates, finishing in the top 10, so they keep their top 2 in the standings positions alive heading into Kansas next week. Ashton Schleiss, good run there for him as well, finishing in 8th. And how about Matt Spalding there, filling in for Lucas Palesso this evening? Good performance inside of the top 10, but only 9 drivers finished on the lead lap with the blazing pace that Kenny Brady put down. And here's a look at some of the other guys that didn't fare quite as well this evening. A lot of drivers finishing a lap down, many of them finishing multiple laps down, and we had about 8 or 9 cars, I believe, by the end of the evening that finished back in the garage area.
Yeah, I mean, to be perfectly honest with you, it is a tricky circuit. So that's a lot less than I thought there was going to be. To be perfectly honest with you, I thought there was going to be a heck of a lot more than potentially showed up in the garage area. But look, I mean, 2 cautions in the opening couple of laps, they settled themselves down. And all things considered, it wasn't a bad race in the end.
Let's see if we could talk with some of our top 3 finishers here this evening. Let's kick things off with the driver of the 62, our third place runner here tonight, the Charlotte Roval, Blake Reynolds.
Straight. Yep.
Hey Blake, it's Scott and Seth up here in the FRM booth. You got us?
Yep. Gotcha.
And we saw that 62 machine up inside the top 5 all night long. We knew coming into tonight, just based off the numbers, that you were going to be a threat at this road course. But what little more did you need there? We saw you kind of play some strategy, staying out longer than some of the other drivers, taking advantage of those fresh tires on the second run there to the checkered flag, but just didn't quite seem like you could get that car up there into clean air out in front.
Yeah, I don't know what I was missing. Obviously, I had a little bit of damage, but it wasn't hurting me too bad. Not enough to be that far off the pace of Kenny. I don't know what Kenny had tonight or what he had figured out. I heard they changed the tire a bit for the road courses, and whatever I was doing before isn't working anymore to be good on the road. So obviously, I've got a bit of homework to do, but it was a solid race. I planned the overcut in general just because I knew the tires were falling off quite a bit. So I figured if those guys get to battling, I'll easily gain the time, and then I'll have plenty of time to pass them. And sure enough, I did. And yeah, P3 is pretty solid for me. I just want to get the owner's points of this car, obviously. Me, Brian, and Kyle have been sharing this, going for the owner's title.
I mean, you come to the tail end of a season like this, things aren't necessarily going your way individually, and 3 of you working together for the owner's title. It's a completely different scenario that you don't really see in any other league. And talk to us about the owners championship. How do you communicate about that? How do you set up who's racing what races and who's driving where?
Well, there's a Facebook group chat, and 5 minutes before the race, someone's like, "Hey, who's driving tonight?" And it's usually like, "Oh, I guess I'll do it." Well,
okay, I'm trying to big brain it too much. Is that's what you're saying? I'm trying to think and plan, and you guys don't do that.
Yeah, I mean, you have to remember we're all ex-NR drivers. Like, you got to remember how how this all works, especially in the FTF way. But yeah, usually, like, if you've noticed the pattern, it's me running the road. Brian runs most of the non-short tracks, ovals, like the 1.5 miles, 2-mile ovals, kind of the awkward ones too, Darlington, Rockingham, that kind of stuff. And then Kyle's been carrying our super speedway and doing pretty well there. And then obviously we've had some guest starters. Ryan Vargas has made a start. Mark Sabetka's made a start. I think Tyler Clayball made a start. There's a bunch of people. If we do get this owner's title, there's a bunch of names on that list with some one-off starts. So it's cool to have a team like this just kind of ripping around and managing our gap to second. I believe we're second. I hope we're still leading. I don't even know. We kind of got lazy with it when I was kind of hoping that this race would turn it around, and obviously it did.
One thing we talked about coming in tonight here as well, Blake, was the track. Running it here during the twilight conditions. We've got the lights on there in the infield, but they don't give a whole lot of opportunity for good visibility. Was that anything that you guys were dealing with here tonight in terms of approaching this road course, not having this track bathed in daylight?
Yeah, it's definitely different for me. In the infield, when Kenny passed me, I don't know if you noticed, we both got damaged because I turned in on him. I had no idea he dove it up my inside going up the hill in the infield. And I turned in on him and squeezed him into the wall. And then I hit the wall the next corner because I was like, oh my god, I didn't even know. Like, I was freaked out. So then I pancaked it coming to the oval and got that damage there. So that was really what I was worried about because I guess I didn't have my gamma setting right. I don't know. I was streaming, and I'm going to go back and watch the VOD, but I think my
that's
monitor,
actually...
yeah,
it's nothing to do with that. It's actually that dark. That's just how it is. That's the way that it's set up. That's, yeah.
Yeah, I was wondering, like, is my gamma all right? Like, I wonder, like, what's going on here? So, I don't know if my stream actually caught that, but it was really hard to see, especially Kenny's car. Jonathan's car was also kind of hard to see, and Oyson's was, or Dave.
Well, you got to remember that that when NASCAR actually came here, that's why they installed the stadium lights on the inside of the track. Was they needed that extra visibility because the external lights, they just don't cover that. There's another league that I run that we commentate, and they do it for a laugh. They actually run the Audi GTO 90, I think it is, or GTO. and they ran it in the dark here, and that infield section was pitch black. They couldn't see very much at all.
Yeah, it's pretty scary if you don't know the track, especially where the curbs are. I think it's turn 4 that the sharper right-hander kind of toward the end of that infield curve. There's that long sausage curve that normally I would avoid during the day, but I kept hitting it all race and I lost probably 5 or 6 seconds total just hitting that curb. So I don't know. It was a fun race. I'm glad I got the result, but obviously this was a bit of a challenge.
Well, still good performance overall. Kept your super up there inside the top 5 all evening long. Bring it home P3. Congratulations on a good run there, Blake. We'll now give you the opportunity for some thank you sponsors and shoutouts.
Sure thing. Everyone, FTF, Speed Inc. for the 62 car, and you guys for putting on a good broadcast. I'm sure it's quite entertaining.
That's Blake Reynolds, third place here tonight under the lights at the Roval. Once again, congrats on a good run, and more than likely, I think we're going to be seeing you at Belle Isle, so best of luck there.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Let's see if we can get our second place finisher here tonight, Ocean Walsh. Hey, Ocean, it's Scott and Seth up here in the FRM booth. You got us?
Yep.
Well, man, I mean, we definitely saw that this 37 car started to come to life the longer the run went on. We saw you start picking up spots there in the second half of this race after the pit stops. You couldn't get up there to Kenny Brady, but still, this car was fast, looked good in practice. What were some of the things that you were dealing with this Mustang?
It handled pretty good. I was a little tight. I usually am on road courses. I'm very careful with the throttle. I never usually burn out my rear tires. I'm usually quite hard on the fronts and easy on the rears. And then, yeah, a lot of the spots I gained on the restarts, just putting it 3 wide when no one else would and kind of going for it. And then obviously passing here is a truly horrific experience. So I spent, I don't know how long behind Oates just trying to get by him, and then I just had to send it in the final corner, which I didn't really want to do, but it worked. So I guess it's okay. But yeah, it was fun. Better than I expected. The set wasn't terrible. Apparently they updated the tire model, but I hadn't driven it before, so I don't know. It handled the same to me, so I'm not going to complain. I don't like losing. I don't like that Kenny beat me by 20 seconds. So I guess we'll have to figure out why that happened and hopefully never let that happen again. And yeah, I don't want somebody else being better than me. I'm used to Blake beating me. So it was nice passing Blake, actually. I don't know why he was struggling so much, but yeah. Him and Brandon running them down from as far back as I did felt good. But losing to Kenny didn't. I don't like that.
Talk to us about that battle with Jonathan Oates, because it went on for such a long period of time. It got to the point where I'm just seeing you start to look like it was getting desperate.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It got to a point where I was every corner in the infield, I'd like stick my nose in and hope that he would just. I didn't know what was going to happen. Every time I stuck it in, he would hold it on the outside because you just can't get it done on the inside of most of the infield corners. That was pretty much it. I sat behind him frustrated for the guts of what felt like an hour. It was probably 5 or 6 laps, and then yeah, when Alex caught me from behind, that was when I was like, oh, okay, I have to send it now. So went for it in the final corner, and I was just glad I didn't wreck him or run him off the track or do something to make him mad at me. So yeah, I think it was a fair overtake. It felt it from in the car.
It was a fair overtake. I mean, you gave him more than enough room. There was enough room either side. I don't know. I think you better go and get some appreciation from Blake Reynolds, because you set up the pass from him on Colonix and then immediately onto Jonathan as well.
Yeah, I thought Blake was going to get me at the end because he, I think, was on a couple lap newer tires, and I got very worried when I had just passed Jonathan and suddenly Blake was there. He was ahead of Alex. That was I don't know, more stressful than it needed to be, considering it's 4:30 in the morning and I'd rather just drive around in circles for a while.
One of our big talking points coming in tonight was the fact that this was an evening/night race at the Charlotte Roval. Were you able to approach this race a little bit differently in how you took these corners in terms of tire wear, since we hadn't had the track bathed in sunlight, or did it basically feel like the normal Charlotte Roval under normal daytime conditions?
It didn't feel exactly like the kind of like if it was 50-degree hotter track temp, but it drives the same. There's just more grip basically, and then there was less tire wear. You look at your tires after a run, and the numbers are a bit, there's more tread on the tire than there would be usually, but it was just the same thing with, basically like running with a faster setup. It just had more grip. It didn't handle too differently. I had only done 2 laps in this in like a B-fix practice, so I didn't have much to compare to, but compared to running the A car, it was just faster. That was kind of it.
Well, a great performance for you here tonight. Osen bringing it home, runner-up here at the Charlotte Roval. Congratulations. And now we'll turn the mic over to you to thank some sponsors and do some shout-outs.
I'll say Alan, my teammate, Alan Bollicino at the start. He kept sending it 3 wide, so I followed him. That got me about 6 spots, and then he wrecked, so that got me another spot. And then Will for making the paint, because I like the paint. Nobody else knows what the paint is, but I like the paint.
I'll let you know that paint sent me to Google, and I got a little bit of an education here tonight with that sponsorship. But congratulations on a great performance here tonight. Go enjoy it, and looking forward to seeing what you do and if you make a couple more starts here during the close of the season.
All right, thanks.
And let's see if we can get our race winner here tonight. Second win on the season, second win in the borders of North Carolina. Let's talk with Kenny Brady. Hey, Kenny, Scott, and Seth up here in the FRN booth. You got us?
Hey, guys.
Well, man, first off, congratulations. You complete the Charlotte sweep here in the FTF Grand National Series. But, man, I mean, nobody could seem to even get in the same zip code as this 97. As soon as you got the race lead, it was lights out.
Yeah, man, I don't really know how I did it. I mean, I like this track, and I race this track a lot. So I definitely had confidence coming into the night. I just wanted to race everyone as fair as I could and just be smart. It was a long race. So I knew if I just kept the car clean and saved my tires on both runs, I could definitely have a shot. I mean, when I started catching down Blake there, I just had all the confidence that if I got the lead, I could just, continue to pull away. So it was definitely a good race.
Did you fall asleep a little bit in there in the middle of the race? I mean, you just had so much control tonight. It was what did you do differently? Like, can I take lessons? Do you offer a paid coaching service? Can I get some of that?
I don't know, man. It's I couldn't tell you. I was just talking to Blake about it. It's just I feel like with all the speed you have to roll through the infield and just the way you pick up the gas, it just fits me. I'm not very good with these cars like on fast road courses like Watkins Glen. So when we come to this track, obviously, like I said earlier, it something clicks, and I love it. This is like my favorite combo, stock cars and the Roval. So it's just I couldn't really tell you. It just works for me, and I'm just able to be fast, I guess.
Obviously from the spectator point of view, looked like, it was an easy job for you out there, but note that that's not the case. Obviously, you have to continue to remind yourself of hitting your marks. We saw a couple of points where there were some lap machines that were spun out in front of you, and you had to make your way around them. You had to deal with traffic for a good portion of the final 15, 20 laps of this race. So, I mean, how difficult is it to keep yourself mentally focused when you've got that big of a lead next to your next competitor, especially at a track like the Charlotte Roval, one of the shorter road courses that we run during the course of the season?
Yeah, I was fortunate with all the lappers. They all let me go, so I appreciate everyone who let me go there. And yeah, there were a few guys that were spun, and I think I got into Jake there in the bus stop, but they were battling. I should have just backed off. So sorry about that to Jake. But yeah, man, it's just I was more worried about a caution because I had such a big lead that I can see why in real life drivers say that every lap is like a year long because it just felt forever. Those last 25 laps, just hoping there's no caution. Because I mean, once I pitted, I knew I had it in the bag if I just hit my marks and nothing happened. So that was more of what I was worried about. Just hoping there was no caution. I mean, like I said, I love this track, so it was not a concern for me to really hit my marks and everything, and I just made sure to keep the tires on it.
Well, certainly seems that Charlotte, North Carolina, under the lights really seems to suit you well. You ended up back in June winning at the Speedway section of this track, and you take the victory here tonight at the Roval configuration at this 1.5 mile speedway. So congratulations on that again, the sweep here at Charlotte. And now we're going to turn the mic over to you for some Victory Lane thank you sponsors and shoutouts.
Yeah, well, I don't really have anyone in the car, and I've had a rough last few months with trying to get back on a team and stuff. I just want to thank Justin for letting me continue to race in the series, because I loved racing it. I haven't raced in it in a while, but I definitely love racing in it. So I appreciate him for allowing me to race, and appreciate you all for a great broadcast, so I can show my skill, I guess. Thank you guys.
That's Kenny Brady. He puts on a dominating performance here tonight at the Charlotte Roval in the FTF Grand National Series presented by Barr Visuals. Congratulations on a job well done there, Kenny. Go enjoy this win.
Thank you, guys. Have a good night.
That's going to conclude the coverage here tonight from the Charlotte Roval. And just to kind of a little of a precursor here, this race would have had a caution break in the middle of it at lap 15 if there had been no natural cautions prior to that, because we had those 2 yellow flags in the first 5 laps of the race that negated that halfway caution coming out, which is why we end up going pretty much clean and green from lap 6 to the checkered flag.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think it's the right decision. It's about pushing the show on and getting things rolling. And well, we saw how difficult it was when we got one caution, that the guys immediately just wanted to file back in there. They wanted to get aggressive, and I think that's probably the right move. I mean, throwing a caution flag, resetting the field, it's difficult. The one thing that it would have changed is it would have set ourselves up for a 1 green flag stop to the end of the race for sure. But I kind of like the races that developed anyway. There was a lot of stories up and down the field. Different kind of race than what everyone was expecting. A lot of people were very, very adaptable to the scenario at hand. And, there's a lot of people that are very happy. Some that'll be a little bit disappointed with themselves. But that's Charlotte, baby.
And it heads us into next week at Kansas. And I have to wonder, with the last 2 races of the playoffs before we get to the season finale being Belle Isle and Martinsville, if you're a playoff contender, I mean, how many times do you have the date for Kansas circled on your calendar? Because, I mean, that seems to be one of the only places in the next 3 weeks where you have a chance of controlling your destiny.
I mean, you still got a chance of controlling your destiny at Detroit Belle Isle. It's just that if something happens in front of you, you get next to no alerts, next to no information coming your way. It's difficult. It's a really, really difficult sort of place to navigate around, because if somebody makes a mistake, everyone's piling in there, and race control there will be very trigger happy, if you will, on the caution flag for very good reason.
As of right now, 3 races into the playoffs, no playoff contenders have won their way into the season finale at Atlanta. Right now, Jonathan Oates and Matthew Zwack still the only 2 up there in the top 2 in the point standings that are currently slated to battle for the championship, but still 3 races left to go. And next week, we continue it on here at the Kansas Speedway. That's going to be next Saturday night with the green flag scheduled to fly at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. But here tonight in the Apex Action Racing Photography 200K at the Roval, it is Kenny Brady burning it down as he completes the Charlotte sweep here in the FTF Grand National Series presented by Barr Visual. Scott, it's been a good one here tonight under the lights in Concord, North Carolina. Good road course race, and appreciate you joining me in the booth for it.
Oh, look, another great road course race. You can bring me in for these road courses because they always spice things up just that little bit, don't they, Seth?
They definitely do, no doubt about that. Thank you all for tuning in tonight. Hope you guys enjoyed our coverage. Be sure to join us next Saturday night at the Kansas Speedway for the continuation of the season. For Scott Rankin, I'm Seth Cole. We'll see you guys next week at Kansas as you've been watching another broadcast courtesy of the Flatout Racing Network.
This broadcast is the copyrighted work of Flatout Racing Network and may not be rebroadcast, retranslated, or used in any form without the express written consent of Flatout Racing Network and iRacing.com Motorsports Simulations. Flatout Racing Network would like to thank you for your support, and we hope you enjoyed tonight's broadcast.